Welcome, everybody, to the Sustainable Futures podcast. Today, our guest is Alexandra Hiniker. She is the Director of Sustainability Initiatives at Carnegie Mellon University. Uh, Welcome to the podcast, Alexandra.
Thank you. And thanks so much for having me. I'm really excited about our conversation today.
Yeah, a little bit of introduction about Alexandra. So Alexandra is currently, as I've already spoken about it, that she's the Director of Sustainability Initiatives at Carnegie Mellon University. But previously, she has overlooked the New York City's Global Goals program at the Mayor's Office for International Affairs, where she sparked a worldwide movement by creating the concept of award-winning volunteering local review, VLR. So New York City became the first city in the world to report directly to the United Nations on its local implementation of the global goals. And over 300 local authorities have now committed to conducting their own reviews. Alexandra began her international development career implementing pandemic preparedness projects in Africa, Asia, and Eastern Europe. And outside of Carnegie Mellon, Hiniker is also an active volunteer in local community development initiatives. So very good to have you on this podcast, Alexandra. I am sure that our audience is going to learn a lot of different kind of things from you today.
Thank you. Yeah, where shall we begin?
So I'll start. I have some questions for you. First of all, our audience would love to know a bit about your journey, about the different types of work that you have done. Could you introduce a little bit about your work?
Sure. Well, as you highlighted, I have about 20 years of experience working at local and global levels. This includes the programs you mentioned, implementing pandemic preparedness projects. I also worked in some of the world's most bombed and mined countries, including Cambodia, Laos, and Lebanon for the United Nations and other international humanitarian disarmament organizations. I served as the representative of the International Peacebuilding Organization, PAX, at the United Nations in New York. And my focus was actually ensuring that these global policies and decisions made at the UN reflected local priorities of our partners in Syria, in Iraq, and South Sudan. I actually began my career working at the Center for Neighborhood Technology, which is based in Chicago. It's a think and do tank. And what my focus was helping to implement the very first car sharing program in Chicago, and also looking at a program called the Energy Smart Pricing Program to educate residential consumers about their electricity use and the cost so that they would use less electricity at times when the cost was higher to reduce the overall stress on the electric grid.
Wow, that is very interesting, especially the ride share. When was that?
Oh my gosh, that was 2002.
Oh,
It was, now we have car sharing across the country. I don't know if it's popular. Is it popular in India?
yes, it is. It is very big thing now. Yeah.
So yeah, there were 5 cars, and we had to encourage people to think, why do I need to own a car? What are the benefits from it? How can I share? And I think just doing that work has set me up for a lifetime of thinking about those kinds of issues, no matter what my job is.
Very systemic thinking, very systemic thinking.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. How do you think that such a variety of career, like this entire diversity of in your career, has impacted your work and your approach towards sustainability?
Yeah, that's a great question. I know that on paper, it seems like I've had a lot of different things, but I've noticed a similarity in all of the jobs that I've had. And that's ensuring that whatever I do is founded on the people who are most impacted by it, whether it's the pandemic preparedness projects, whether it is humanitarian disarmament, peace building, car sharing, sustainable development. And I think working in so many varied contexts has really made me realize we're all in this together. We're all on the same team, and we're just trying to figure it out. We may all have a different role to play, or we may be impacted by roles differently, but we're really here working together to do our best to make the world better for everyone.
But did you have to prepare a lot before you move from one role to another, or any you had to build a different type of skill sets, or how was it for you?
Yeah, well, my first job was at the Center for Neighborhood Technology, and that was really focused on Chicago, but I knew that I always wanted to do something international. I didn't quite
Yes.
know what that meant. So
Hmm.
I went to graduate school in Poland. My family
Hmm.
is from Poland. So I went and
Okay.
got a graduate degree there. And then I moved back to Washington, D.C., and I said, here I am. I have a master's degree. I speak 3 languages. I'm ready for the best job in the world. And I got a part-time unpaid internship requiring an advanced degree. And I worked as a smoothie maker and a chocolate fountain attendant to pay for my rent.
Wow.
So it's, things don't get handed to you just like that. But
Yeah, right.
through talking to friends actually that I went to school with, I found out about a role at DAI, which is a U.S. Agency for International Development contractor, to do
Right.
really programmatic work.
Hmm.
And it was looking at contracts and budgets and so on for a food safety program. And I thought,
Hmm.
oh, finally, a job that pays. I'll do it, even though I don't know anything about contracts and budgets.
Yeah.
And it was wonderful because this opportunity to learn how contracting works, how budget works, how supervising contractors work has been useful throughout my career. And at that time, I don't know if you remember 2005, there was this great bird flu outbreak.
Yeah.
So suddenly was given responsibility to work in 10 different countries to help respond to this. And it started really administratively, but by the end, I was running the trainings myself. I even learned how to kill a chicken with my bare hands to snap its neck.
And did you
Yeah.
actually go to Africa for that?
I went to, let's see, I went from Afghanistan to Mali to Rwanda to Ghana, Laos, uh,
Wow.
Vietnam, Bulgaria, all over the world to help prepare people to medical professionals to respond to bird flu. But I got really sick of traveling everywhere and I
Hmm.
wanted to just stay in one place. So I
Yeah.
applied to the UN and got a job working on mine action,
Hmm.
which I didn't know anything about, but I was
Yes.
hired because of my skills on communications and advocacy.
Very
And
nice. Yeah.
to get back to your question, because I've gone a bit in a circle,
Yeah.
in each job, I learned about something that I enjoyed doing and I built upon that. So when I moved to Cambodia and worked for the UN, I learned that I was really passionate about landmine and cluster munition clearance and eradicating these weapons. So
Mm-hmm.
then I ended up getting a job with an organization because I met someone through that job
Mm-hmm.
working in Laos and Lebanon, and
Yes.
then so et cetera, et cetera. So I just have been slowly building my skill set over time, centering those values that I always have, that people are the most important aspect of any job that I do.
Right, right. Very interesting. So you have picked up a lot of skills on the go, and probably you're very good at learning and implementing things. That is why you could jump from one role to another role.
I think I'm better at working with other people who know things and yeah, and learning from them. I think
Yeah.
there's a little bit of both. Yeah,
Yes,
teamwork.
yes. So while leading the New York City's sustainable development programs at the Mayor Office for International Affairs, you created the concept of voluntary local reviews, or VLR. So your idea has been adopted by United Nations and over 330 local governments, as we discussed earlier. So tell us how you came up with this entire idea and why does this matter?
Sure. So I started working at the Mayor's Office for International Affairs back in 2017. I'd been
Mm-hmm.
working internationally for a long time, but knew
Hmm.
that it was really important to engage at the local level. So this seemed like the perfect fit.
Yeah,
And the only job available was to work on the Sustainable Development Goals. Now,
yeah.
I hadn't been working on them at all. I was looking at the Security Council, at
Hmm.
conflict resolution. So I knew the UN system inside and out.
Hmm.
And I also recognize the critical role that cities play
Right.
in helping to inform decision-making policies at the UN.
Mm-hmm.
So leveraging my position in New York City as the host of the
Hmm.
United Nations, I developed a concept to systematically engage with the City of New York officials to find a way for them to be part of these global discussions.
Mm-hmm.
And And for your listeners who aren't aware, the Sustainable Development Goals were agreed in 2015, and
Yes.
countries are invited to report on their progress
Right.
voluntarily
Right.
through a mechanism called the Voluntary National Review,
Mm-hmm.
or VNR, and this is
Right.
done every July.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew that everyone at the UN loved a good acronym, and a way to really get them to believe and understand in the importance of cities was to develop a parallel or complementary process to the Voluntary National Review. I first considered calling it a Voluntary City Review, or VCR, but that limited it to only cities. And I thought all local governments, counties, states had
Yeah.
something to do. So I called it a Voluntary Local Review. And I made it up completely. I wasn't sure what I was doing. I had the good fortune of having a supervisor who didn't have a lot of technical experience and really trusted me to do what I did best. And so we did it. We became the first city in the world to do it. And since then, other people have taken on, and the UN has really adopted this as their own process now.
That's really amazing, and it's a big feat actually to come up with something and getting it implemented at mayor's city level as well as at UN level.
Yeah, it's all about partnerships and understanding how this would benefit the people who are actually doing the work.
Yeah. You mentioned the Global Goals program. Can you explain what exactly you envision this implemented through this initiative?
Sure. So the Sustainable Development Goals, these 17 goals that all countries agreed to achieve by 2030, were agreed at the a national level, but they actually specifically mention in the UN resolution the important role that local authorities, academia, the private sector have, but they don't define what it is.
Yeah.
And now here in a city, in your city, I know that we've talked about this, you experience the things that are the topics that are addressed in the global goals day in, day out.
Yeah.
It's cities who are the first ones to respond to most of the topics laid out in the Sustainable Development Goals. So the program was initiated in the mayor's office to strengthen the connections between what was being discussed at the UN and what was happening on our cities, and how we could better incorporate city leader discussions in the UN. Also, bring people from the UN and from other cities and countries around the world to New York City so that my colleagues could learn how to do better. It wasn't just to show off, it was more about exchanging and learning.
Right. It's now been more than 5 years since you implemented the VLR system. So how do you think it has accelerated the global progress towards SDGs?
I think that there's actually kind of mixed results. I'm really excited that so many cities are taking this seriously, and that the UN has actually developed modules through UN Habitat and the Department for Economic and Social Affairs to bring local governments into the conversations. But I also recognize that there's a lot of superficiality around it. And a lot of people are saying that they're doing reports just to do reports. They're hiring external consultants, but they're not doing the hard work of going through the goals and saying, what are we doing? Where can we do better? And so on. I'm sure this is something that you see through Earth5R, that you work to bring people together, but sometimes they just want to say they're doing stuff rather than actually do stuff. I'm curious, is that the case that you've seen?
So basically, we have also been working with a lot of governments and organizations and companies. So yeah, basically one of the things that is most common is a lot of organizations, they have that visual thinking that they want to do things, but there are a lot of conflict areas where implementation becomes difficult, very, very difficult. Because if you look at the entire SDGs, which was planned to be achieved by 2030, we are seeing that we're lagging far behind, and we need acceleration. So yes, you're right that this is a very big challenge across the industry and across different sectors. So yeah, very big challenge.
Yeah.
Yeah. Your current position as the Director of Sustainability Initiative at Carnegie Mellon University. So what does this role entail? Like, what are the activities you do? And can you share what is your average day looks like for our listeners?
Yeah, so back in 2019, the provost
Mm-hmm.
of the university, who leads our academic affairs, committed the university to the Sustainable Development Goals. And I started in 2020
Mm-hmm.
to help implement the commitment to do the first voluntary university review, looking at how universities contribute to the goals across
Yes.
education, research, and practices.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you may recall that we had a pandemic that began in
Yes.
2020, which made engaging and understanding existing activities a little bit challenging because as everything was up in the air. But actually I found it quite interesting because we had a captive audience where we could talk to a lot of different people about what they cared about in terms of the Sustainable Development Goals. So in
Mm-hmm.
2020, we published the first voluntary university review of the Sustainable Development Goals. And we
Okay.
used what we found there to inform our programming. So in
Mm-hmm.
2021, we transitioned to an online format where students, staff, and faculty can search courses, researchers, and practices across campus using the Sustainable Development Goals in an online dashboard.
Okay.
And then in 2022, when people started
Mm-hmm.
returning to campus, we
Mm-hmm.
opened up a permanent space in our libraries, the Sustainability Studio, where people can come together from across campus. And we're in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. So from the Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania community can come together to talk about issues of shared concern and shared priorities. And now I have an incredible team of students, undergraduate and graduate, including some from India,
Oh.
who are helping lead our efforts to first support and guide departments and units and community partners in their efforts to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals. Second, the students are developing a youth network across the city of Pittsburgh. And I was thinking it might be
Okay.
interesting for them to connect with you and the youth that you're working with in India to
Yeah.
talk about their interests related
Hmm.
to sustainability and leadership. And the third thing that they're really focused on is ensuring that diversity, equity, and inclusion are included in these discussions about sustainability,
Mm-hmm.
because
Yeah.
um, these are, of course, central to the goals, but not always
Correct. Yeah.
prioritized. I don't know if
Yes.
that's a challenge that you face with Earth5R, is making sure that that's also part of the discussions.
So yes, basically for us, we have understood that one of the larger challenges of sustainability is having a society where there is equal opportunity for different types of communities and gender-wise also. And this is one reason why specifically we have a women empowerment program where we
Mm.
find that particularly in the bottom of the pyramid or in the slum areas, there are a lot of women who need work, they have time, but they don't have livelihood. So we started creating those circular economy program. And we also saw that when they were making revenue, when they were making money, there were higher chances of that money being invested into child's healthcare or education. This was very starking fact that we figured out, that money being paid to man versus
Yeah.
women, it was more likely that it was being reinvested, and that had its own cascading effect, social effect,
Uh-huh.
economic impact. So yes, we do have a very strong focus on this area.
And it's so interesting that like you just like what you just talked about, you just touched on the 4 or 5 sustainable development goals. It's like
Yeah,
you can't
exactly.
just address one thing at a time.
Yeah,
Women's empowerment means education, it means workforce development, it means I don't know what else you
yeah,
touch on,
healthcare,
healthcare, all of
banking,
it,
financial security, financial
financial
literacy.
security.
Yeah,
Exactly. Yeah,
yeah, yeah,
that's great.
yeah. So, what do you think is precisely lacking or missing in the current system of educational institutions? Since you are one of the educational faculties and you have been on the both sides, so particularly when it comes to tackling the climate change sustainability more broadly, and how do you think it should be addressed? Like, were the learnings for others?
Well, I think what we were just talking about is emblematic of one of the biggest challenges is what every university is different,
Yeah,
but at CMU we have 7 colleges: engineering, computer science, humanities, public policy, science, and business, and everyone is so focused on their own discipline. And when they
yeah,
hear a word like climate action, they think, oh, that is just recycling and greenhouse
Yeah.
gas reductions or whatever. And I am an economist, or I'm looking at cultural development in 19th century Spain or something. And so a lot of times people at a university are so focused on their specific discipline that they miss how it's connected to these really the broader
Right.
topics that are so important, like you just highlighted this women's empowerment program.
Yeah, yeah.
And so I think one of the biggest challenges I have is just to get everyone thinking about what their role is in this broader effort, and not to think that it's someone else's job. Because when people see themselves in the work, they're more interested in taking part in it.
Yeah, correct. So are there any sort of a methodology that you have developed that that is like a sort of a framework that you have developed that you usually use it for
Yeah,
building?
it's actually based on I did a consultancy for the United Nations
Mm,
Foundation where I
mm-hmm.
developed a series of guides
Yes,
on how universities can address the Sustainable Development Goals, looking at three overarching questions.
yes.
First of all, why is the university even doing this, and for whom
Mm,
are they doing it?
mm-hmm.
And then you go through a checklist of who is impacted by the university engaging this work, and what are
Sure.
the actual goals of a university
Mm-hmm.
engaging with the Sustainable Development Goals. The second question is, where are we already doing work? Because the Sustainable
Okay.
Development Goals are
Yes.
already, they're kind of new, but like we've been talking about these issues for a long time. We
Yeah,
don't
these
need
are
to,
systemic issues.
exactly, we don't need to reinvent the wheel. We need to
Correct.
find out where there's strengths, maybe where there's opportunities to do a bit more,
Yeah,
um, and then build on that rather than start from scratch.
correct.
Yeah, I'm sure you've seen that in your work. And then the third question is just like, what programs are we going to implement in order to address these needs that we've identified through this process? And that's, engaging with students and having them do something. It's maybe educating faculty about the goals and how they can think more broadly about how their work can be applied in other contexts. It's working with staff who in a university setting are often, the least prioritized group, even though they have such an important role to play in many of these activities.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And I
Uh,
can share the link with you for the guide that might be
yeah,
helpful for,
please
yeah,
do that. Yeah, that'll be great for our readers. We can also
yeah.
publish it in our article. Can you, you seem to have done a lot of interesting activities while as a faculty also, because you bring a lot of your experience from the industry, from United Nations to education. But specifically, can you share any particular initiative or innovation that you have spearheaded at CMU?
Yeah, I'd like to talk about a specific course that I created in
Hmm.
response to the stated needs of our students.
Yes.
When I first got here, I met so many students who were really passionate about making a change and they wanted
Hmm.
to do something. And they
Yeah.
said, why can't CMU recycle more? We need to
Right.
recycle. Where's the compost? Recycling is important, composting is important, but I asked the students, is this your priority, or is this just what you see that's around you? And they said, it's not. The students often said, like, it's not what I think is the most important thing. It's just the thing that I see that I can have the most immediate impact in my day-to-day
Right.
work.
Right.
But I thought that it would be helpful to support students in thinking through how their particular passion was relevant to local and global discussions. So I
Mm-hmm.
created a course called Local Advocacy for Global Change,
Mm-hmm.
where I asked the students to look at the city of Pittsburgh, where we are, and see an
Yes.
issue that they've noticed that they think they're particularly interested in.
Mm-hmm.
I asked them to determine how it's related to the Sustainable Development
Mm-hmm.
Goals,
Mm-hmm.
and then to find an international policy or process where their passion was discussed. So I'll give the example of maternal mortality
Yeah.
because one student was particularly passionate about that topic. So she
Yes.
looked into the extremely high rates of Black maternal mortality in Pittsburgh and
Mm-hmm.
started to look into why that was, what the statistics were, and how she could engage with organizations and people working on that in Pittsburgh and link that to national discussions in the United States and then global discussions with the Convention on the Elimination of Discrimination Against Women. And she looked at other countries to see what their policies were to address maternal mortality, and particularly disparities in maternal mortality. And through that, she got an understanding of not just how things could be addressed here in Pittsburgh, but how she could engage in global conversations about something that she was so passionate about locally. And I've taught that course a few times, and students have gone on to do great things.
Wow, that's
Yeah.
amazing. So that's the impact of this initiative. Like it has inspired students and it has inspired an initiative as well.
Yeah, and several of the students have come and interned for me, or joined opportunities I've identified for students to participate in international conferences, like an international conference on disarmament that took place in Geneva. Some of my former students were able to participate in that and see how policy is actually discussed at the international level.
Very good experience for them to go out of the college and participate in something that is where they learn on-hand skills on the job. How do you encourage collaborations across various departments at the university? Because that seems to be one of the difficult areas in education institutions, to work between different departments.
It sure is. Yeah, no, well, I think I'll take an example of something that we're doing next Monday. I have a colleague who received a grant from our Center for Arts and Society and our Dietrich College of Humanities to look at coffee as a form of hospitality. So he brings people together to talk about coffee and how it's drunk in different countries, and exploring the roots of the coffee, the social and economic and political roots of coffee, but bringing these conversations around in a way that is hospitable and open and welcoming. And so it's he's working with our colleagues who look at the environment to look at the environmental impacts of it, but also sort of aware of the social justice and economic justice aspects of it. And they come together at the sustainability studio to talk about these topics. And I think it just goes back to people seeing their work in a broader discussion. And the first, actually, I'll say that the first step is that we work with faculty to talk to them about how their research is related to the goals. So someone who maybe thinks that they are a robotics expert. There's a woman who's a robotics expert, but she's really passionate about food security. And if you look at her research, that doesn't come up. But if you talk to her a little bit more and start talking about it, how it's related to the goals, and that helps us connect her with other opportunities both on and off campus to pursue that passion in her research.
So this entire collaboration is not just in theory, but it's actually in practice. Yeah.
It's we haven't won any bajillion-dollar grants or anything like that, but we are bringing people together, and that's a hope, just that people, not everyone has to know what each of the 17 goals are, but to think, whether they're students, faculty, or staff, about like what their role is and what their interests are and how that can be part of these broader discussions.
Yeah, it's a great culture builder also.
Yes, exactly. Have you found that in your work as well?
Yeah. So basically, at Earth5R, although we are a sustainability tech company, but we make sure that we engage into volunteering work from time to time, because we have so many organizations that use our app for field work, for community level action. So we ourselves also participate from time to time. It has been fun. I think it's very important, that to bond around some action.
Yes, totally. I agree.
What do you envision the role of universities and education in tackling climate change and sustainability more broadly?
Universities are where people are in labs tucked away somewhere, looking at these really complicated challenges that people who are practitioners day to day don't have time to look into. They're coming up not just with technical solutions, but also policy solutions, and figuring out how to link those technical policy research questions with broader day-to-day issues is where we're really going to make that difference. for researchers, but also for students. I think educating, people talk a lot about young people, but we're all students, and a university is a
Yeah,
place where we're all learning something no matter what our age. And so
right.
just educating people about what sustainability means and how they can be engaged, and how economic and social and environmental issues are interconnected, and why equity is so important. Again, they don't have to know the 17 goals by heart,
Yeah.
but just getting people to think about that and how it applies to their work, whatever their job may be, I think is really important.
Yeah. Do you think universities can assist their local communities while tackling climate change? Because you shared some examples where students are actually going out in Pittsburgh area and working. So would you have any specific example that you can share where universities can assist the local communities?
Yeah, I think, this is a really tricky topic because
Mm,
universities are, especially students and faculty, are so keen to help out, but they're not as skilled at listening to communities and
mhm,
understanding what their needs are. They're
right.
sometimes so excited about providing their technical solution that they're
Hmm.
not actually engaging with what the communities need.
Very
So
important point.
it is so important,
Mm,
and unfortunately very difficult to manage with every.
yes, yes.
But one thing that I worked with is we have an organization here called Sustainable Pittsburgh,
Hmm.
and they established a network called Discover, which is an acronym for things that I can never remember, and that's why it's an acronym. But it's about looking into regional sustainability. And so
Okay.
Discover brings together local government officials, nonprofits, universities to talk about our shared definitions of sustainability and how we measure it. And universities have such an important role to play in helping support those efforts for the community and our partners to better understand what their needs are. And then once they've decided that, to support them in what they've identified their needs are. And that's an organizational level. But you said communities, and that also just means people around
Yeah,
us. It doesn't have to be something formalized.
right.
Um, so we have a few different community engagement fellowships that really focus on encouraging students to think critically about how they're engaging with communities before they go out and start telling them what to do.
Yes.
Yeah, so I think that that's helpful too.
So these programs are run by the faculty or is it cross collaboration?
Yes. So for
Okay.
example, we have in our Dietrich College of Humanities and
Hmm.
Social Sciences, a Dietrich Community Engagement Fellowship, where
Yeah.
students spend a couple of years taking courses about community engagement, and then they're matched with a partner who
Okay.
who they work with. And then we have a lot of experiential learning, particularly
Yeah.
in public policy school.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For example, in India, universities have got colleges have got something called as NSS, National Social Service Scheme. So in which,
Oh.
yeah, so in this National Social Service Scheme, students enroll into these programs, and there are certain faculties which are also part of this program who lead this program. And
Mhm.
others, they reach out to the committees, they do volunteering work, and they
Yeah.
also get credit hours for from part of the it's part of the academic. So a lot of students go for this. It's a very big organization across the country.
Mhm. But
Yeah.
so it's who is like advising the students? It's done by faculty in different universities, or
Yeah,
there's a
yeah. So
national.
there is a whole
Okay.
board, there is a whole national board, then there is
Uh-huh.
a then there are local chapters, and then there's chapter at the college level. And from the college, there are certain faculties which are appointed to become the mentors for these students who lead these programs. And
Oh, that's great.
they partner with local NGOs and local organization with municipality, and
Mhm.
then they solve local issues like they go to the committees, they train, they do run different initiatives.
Oh,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So
yeah,
volunteering
I'll have to
program,
look into that a little bit
yeah,
more after. That
it's
sounds
it's
great.
it's a volunteering program, but it's a very, very massive scale. There are millions of people involved in this across the country. Yeah.
Millions. Amazing.
And every single college in the country is part of it.
That's very impressive. I just can't imagine. I'm just thinking about how to even manage that. And
Yeah, it's a very big scale.
yeah.
It's very, very old system.
Okay, so
Yeah,
there's some roots.
yeah, yeah.
I
Uh,
see.
So, Alexander, what changes do you think are required to the current international system to better address sustainability needs? Because asking this question because of your background into international development and as a volunteer or as a professional, both.
I think that people need to look beyond their own sphere of influence and start working actually in tandem or together with other people,
Mm,
listening to other people what their needs are, because everyone sort of has their idea or conception of what's wrong and how to fix it. But if we don't line them up and ensure that everyone is working together, we might actually undermine some other people's work, and that will prevent us from achieving these really ambitious objectives.
right. What do you believe is the importance of international laws and treaties to address these national sustainable goals? Because a lot of international crossovers and conflict of interest could also arise.
Yeah, I'm a firm believer in international humanitarian and human rights law. I worked for a long time on that.
Yeah.
And it is very complicated and disappointing and frustrating, but I've come to believe it's the best way we have to bring these different countries together on equal footing to
Mm,
talk about these shared values and commitments. Because
mhm,
I just can't imagine, and I've thought about it a lot, any other way of ensuring that everyone works together. And of course, there are countries who don't commit, or there are countries who violate it, but
mm,
even that is an opportunity to talk about what could be done better. I think it's really
mm.
important to have this international understanding of what it is we're trying to achieve across topics, and then to have the space locally to talk about implementation and why it matters.
Okay. What are some of the current trends or developments, according to you, in sustainable policy making that you find interesting?
Well, unsurprisingly, I think that it's really great that local government, whether it's
Mm,
city or state or county, is
mm,
having a greater role in international conversations. And of
mm,
course, this doesn't mean that they're the decision makers who say yes or
yes,
no to a treaty, but rather that they use their experience, which again, they are the ones actually implementing a lot of the issues that are
mm,
discussed at the international level
yes,
to
yes,
help inform those discussions.
yeah.
The practical experience is really critical.
Yeah, yeah. Even Earth5R is part of OECD countries panel, which is on sustainable development goals for the cities and region. And in these meetings, these meetings happens once in a year in Paris. So we have seen in these meetings representatives and mayors from smaller cities, like particularly Brazil, South America,
Yeah,
European cities, some of the very smaller cities also. They come forward and they have certain best practices that they're sharing with the rest of the world, and
yes.
there's a lot of learning, interesting learnings actually. Some of the very offbeat learnings.
Yeah. And I think one thing that was so interesting about working for the city of New York is externally people think, oh, it's this big city. They have so many resources, they
Yes,
have all the solutions. But when I talked to my colleagues in different departments, they were so excited about meeting people from cities of any size who could help them do their job better. They're like,
yes,
we need help. We want to know. And those connections, when I would see my colleagues working in wastewater treatment from Brazil and the US, and just like they're they would light up talking about these shared issues and concerns, and to me that brings me such deep satisfaction.
yeah, because some of the issues are very fundamental issues, and whether it's a global north or global south, the problems are same.
Exactly.
Yeah,
There's a different context, there's so many different things, but fundamentally they are the same. And fundamentally, I think people are this, I mentioned this at the outset,
exactly,
like we
exactly.
really we want to connect and share and learn from each other.
Right, right. Uh, Alexander, what skills do you think? Because we have a very or large audience of Earth5R readers and audience, and our stakeholders are very young people, particularly college
Mhm.
students. So, and these are the people who are transitioning there or might like to transition to climate economy, because that is where a lot of young people want to make an impact. So, what skills do you think are necessary for these students who are trying to make a career or like yours, who want to have some international exposure, or they
Mhm.
want to work at UN, or they want to work with the cities, administrations, or want to become academics, because you have a very diverse career. So we would like to enlighten them a little bit about different fields.
Sure. Well, I think one of the most important aspects is, as I mentioned before, really just to listen and understand what's
Hmm.
going on around you so you can figure out how you might be able to be part of the solution.
Yes.
And, not everyone is going to do the same thing. So people should pursue their interests. We all have a role to play. We don't all have to do the exact same thing. And in fact, that might actually
Yeah.
prevent us from getting to a goal. So I
Right.
think it's really important for people when they're younger and have fewer commitments, maybe, to figure out and try out what topics are interesting to them, what experiences bring them joy or give them energy, and
Hmm.
based on that pursue educational opportunities. There's not, well, at least for me, there's not like one linear perfect path, like where you do one thing and suddenly you get these amazing jobs. It's really being open to new experiences, and
Hmm.
in my opinion, yeah.
Any particular stages of your career where you felt that having a mentor is important or helped you?
Yeah, I think, mentor can be defined in so many different ways, but I
Hmm.
think about my boss when I was working on the bird flu program, who completely supported and trusted me and let me go with it and he let me, he didn't let me, I had to go around the world, and like, I didn't know people in some of these countries, and I showed up and I
Yeah.
had the equipment, and I was able to do it. So that was great. But the person who was my best mentor, I've never told her. I've never told her. I should reach out to her. She was my boss when I was in Cambodia working for the United Nations.
Hmm.
And she had a really big portfolio. She was a little bit older than me,
Hmm.
and she was really stressed out. And I said, can I help you out? And she said, sure, this thing seems to be interesting to you. I'll allow you to try it out.
Hmm.
And I did. And she supported me and gave me feedback, which I think ultimately took her more time than just
Yeah.
doing it herself. But in the end, I was a stronger colleague, and I found an area that was really interesting to me. So having mentors who trust you and support you and provide feedback to me is really helpful. And her name
But
is Melissa Sabatier. I'll
uh,
go and tell her.
so shout out to your mentor.
Yes, thank you, Melissa.
But also very important thing, you mentioned that you went out and asked if you could help. So that initiative, taking that initiative, that's the first step, is also very
Oh,
important.
yes, thank you so much for remind that. I find it so hard to do that sometimes, but like when any student comes and asks me, I want to help them. I think we all want, I mean, you
Yeah.
probably get tons of people reaching out to
Yes.
you. You're so
Yes.
successful. You have all these an incredible team.
Yeah.
You want to help people, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So a
So
lot of time,
everyone, sorry, go ahead.
people think that they would people other might take them like, otherwise, that
Yeah.
they're asking for help, that means they don't know something. But it's other way around. Actually, people are looking for opportunities to help other people.
Yes, exactly. It makes us happy too, I think.
Yeah, and that's how we connect as human beings.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Uh, so Alexander, what can students do to gain experience and build a solid foundation in sustainable policy making?
Well, I think, it depends on the university here. So I'll
Hmm.
speak more about CMU.
Hmm.
There's so many opportunities and programs, and we have this Office of Undergraduate Research that manages fellowships, and they really encourage students to come talk to them so they can connect them with paid fellowships and opportunities, not just
Hmm.
like Fulbright, but even smaller ones in different areas.
Yes.
The one thing is to go see what resources your university has, because there
Hmm.
are fellowships and internships out there. The second one is to connect with student clubs that are working on things you're interested in. I was an active member of the environmental concerns organization in college, and that's where I met
Okay.
a lot of my network and friends that I'm still
Hmm.
close with to this
Right.
day. Um, and I think the third thing is to also make time to enjoy yourself with other activities. So I play the saxophone. I love to
Oh,
volunteer with local organizations. Make
yes.
time to do that too, and you're not hyper
Yes.
focused on just one goal, but you're more of a complete person. So those are my
Uh, would
recommendations.
like to know a bit about your volunteering experience that you're currently doing. What kind of
Oh,
volunteering is it?
gosh, I wish I had a picture here. So Pittsburgh has this great industrial past. We were a big steel maker. I think Indian companies were coming to look to take over some of our steel production.
Hmm.
And there's a lot of leftover infrastructure here.
Mm-hmm.
So organizations look to maintain it and make sure that it's going well. And I go there and I don't do anything with my brain. I just, they tell me to mow the lawn. I mow the lawn. I look at the beautiful sights. I learn about it. They tell me to paint something. I paint something. They tell me, they taught me how to build a bench. I didn't know how to build a bench. I learned how to do that. And the satisfaction of doing something with my hands that contributed to a local community project keeps me going through the week sometimes when I'm facing some really difficult discussions.
So
And
there,
getting to know members of the communities is great.
so that is where you're not going to teach, you're going to learn.
I am 100% going to learn. I don't want to think about managing anything. I don't want to think about what goes where. I just want to
Hmm.
go. Someone tells me what to do. I do it, and I enjoy just being in the historic sites.
I
Yeah.
found this particular part very inspiring because despite being a faculty and a teacher and being such a successful person and having so much of career peaks, you still go out and take out time for helping the local community and volunteering on a regular basis. That's really amazing, very inspiring. Anything,
Yeah. I can't
anything,
imagine not doing it. It would be so, yeah.
yeah.
Thank
Any
you.
other things that you do, how do you deal with your stress, or you must be having a very busy time, so how do you deal with that?
Sure. Do you really want to know?
Yeah, it would
I'm
be interesting.
I'm obsessed with powerlifting, like lifting really heavy weights. I
Okay.
go to the gym 3 times a week and I just try and pick up the heaviest, I train and pick up the heaviest thing possible. And it is so satisfying to go, pick something up and put it down and like I measured it and it's done. It's not these long, complicated problems that it's going to take us years to solve. It's just,
Yeah.
all right, I picked up 10 more pounds than last week and I keep adding to it. That is an amazing stress relief. Yeah.
And
And playing the
also,
saxophone and making music. I love that.
oh, so you take care of both body and mind.
Exactly. Yes. What about you?
I play guitar, just like you play music. So I also play
Uh-huh.
guitar and a little bit of piano. And also, for me, my physical activities are swimming and cycling.
Oh, yes. Cycling
Yeah,
is
yeah,
great too.
yeah, yeah. Really helps me to uh, have a bit of a slow life. Having a bit of slow life is really important. And I think that all of us should have one hobby and one creative activity that keeps us on track.
I couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I do meditate as well.
Oh,
Yeah.
we can talk about that more later. I don't want to go in. I meditate off and on, and when I do, it's wonderful.
Yeah, yeah. We'll definitely talk about it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Alexander, it has been really amazing talking to you and getting to know about your work experience and particularly different skills that you had to develop to adopt those types of different kind of work that you're doing. And also, there's a lot of learning for our audience and for the young people here. And thank you so much for this amazing interview. And we look forward to knowing and learning more from you in the future as well.
Thank you so much for reaching out. I really enjoyed talking to you, and I hope we can continue the
Yes,
conversation.
yes, sure. Thank you so much. Good times. Bye.
Okay. Bye,
Bye.
everybody.
Bye. Bye.